Hi, this is Terry from Art of Toys, and this month we are doing Doll Artist. And today we have with us Sherry DeBow, who is a wild, crazy girl that does wonderful dolls.
Thank you.
So, Sherry, just tell me a little bit about you. You've got the dolls, but tell me about you first.
Okay, I've collected dolls my whole life. I started making porcelain dolls and quickly fell out of love with the fact that they were molds made by someone else. So I started sculpting my own, and that is what led me here. So I've always done art. I've always painted and done things like that, but my first love as far as collecting has always been dolls. So
what inspires your art other than your pink hair?
Yeah, definitely things from childhood for sure. Dreams, lots of books that I've read. I'm pretty well obsessed with anything Jane Austen, any period pieces, anything kind of Princess for a Day. But at the same time, I like stuff to have a little bit of a dark edge too, you know. I love all the Grimm fairy tales, and I like the Grimm part of the fairy tales, like the actual, not the Disney cleaned up version, but the dark end of how things can go wrong and how sometimes that's just life, you know. So I like the dolls. A lot of times they have somber faces, sometimes they have smirky faces. I like the expression to be in it because I like it to emulate life but still be a doll. So
do you do this as a full-time career?
Yes.
Yes, so you don't have another job that...
I don't. I was a hairdresser for 25 years, and as you can see, old habits die hard. So I still love doing the hair. It's one of my favorite parts for sure. But yeah, no, I quit doing that about 15 years ago and started being an artist full-time.
So is your main medium then the polymer? You don't paint or do anything?
Oh yeah, I do paint as well.
I've seen some of your...
Yeah, I paint, but generally when I take a break to paint, it kind of feels more like an exercise towards what my next collection of dolls is going to be. So as much as I love the painting, this is my safe place for sure. Sculpting is my first love.
Do you usually do them in a series?
I do. I usually work on 3 to 10 dolls at a time. So they usually have kind of an overrunning theme, but even within a theme, I'll have different things. Like almost every collection, if I'm working on a large collection, almost every collection has my own version of Alice in Wonderland. Almost everyone has my version of a bride because I have a really twisted view of marriage. Each collection has usually something that I repeat, but in a new way.
Do you remember what the first piece of art is that you created and sold?
Oh man. Let's see, my first public show I had in downtown Napa, and I was actually in the middle of a divorce, and I did this whole series on cupcake brides. And so I did all these brides on top of little pieces of cake or wedding cake, basically like they were offering themselves, like kind of like you can have everything, because obviously that's how life is going to go down, you know. You just have to keep giving of yourself. And so, yeah, the first piece was a bride piece.
What is your process? Do you first draw them?
Yeah, so generally it starts with a sketch, which is kind of weird for me because it's kind of like Tarantinoing it, because you work backwards, because obviously in the end you're winding up with a fully sculpted piece. So starting with a completed drawing, then I have to work backwards and think, okay, now skeleton. Okay, now bare bones of putting the foil on, wrapping and masking tape, because that's basically how it goes. So I don't sketch out the armature and all that. I just sketched out the finished piece. So it goes wire, foil, masking tape, laying on of clay, multiple baking process. The face and hands are always last, and then I paint.
And how much do you think each piece basically takes?
It's really hard to answer. I know people always ask me, how much time does it take? But, you know, as an artist, you're trying to feel that moment of inspiration. And so there's dolls that have just completely flowed because I had the whole thing figured out. I knew what I was going to do, and it worked. It like came together. But then there's times that I'm like frustrated with trying to tell the story of what that doll is, and I have to figure out what elements am I going to put into it so it really tells this story of sadness or this story of happiness or whatever it is, you know.
I understand that. Do you ever have to just walk away from a piece because it's not happening and come back to it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the time.
And
in fact, that is really why I work on like 3 to 10 dolls, because of the factor of a point of frustration or a point of, oh my gosh, no, I cannot do 1 more minute of sewing on that. I need to come over here and finish this little piece of jewelry or whatever it is. So, because everything I work like an assembly line. So all the baking gets done at once. Then all the painting gets done next. Then all the clothing goes on. Then all the hair goes on. And then accessories go last. So they're all like laying there calling to me like little creatures.
So one thing that is unique about Sherri's art is that it's mostly designed to hang on the wall. So if you want to tell us a little bit about these pieces. Now, we had a big question if this is a doll, but go ahead.
Okay, so this basically, I mean, she's a stick puppet. But to me, because it's candy on a stick and because she has her arms and her skirt and everything, I feel like it is a doll. It's a doll that can actually be played with and tell a story. So each one's a little different. This one, actually, she has ball jointed arms. They don't all. Like this one, those arms are stiff. This one has a hinged arm on one side, but the other side, because she's holding her balloon, her arm is stiff. So they're all made just a little bit different, and since they're all one of a kind, I can do that. Like,
they're really not play dolls, though. She just said you can
they're
play with
not.
them. They're works of art.
Yeah, an adult can play with them, not a child. So, but this one's hinged, and this one's hinged. She's hinged, but her head is posable. So they all have different little elements. Yeah, she's kind of crazy.
Why, but I like her. She's very creepy, but I like her.
Yeah. So she has that. She's another one that was like, she's my take off of Alice, the ghost of Alice. Like Alice in Wonderland, but
she's
like
zombie
going to bed. Yeah. So
are there art challenges that you still want to tackle?
That's a really interesting question. There are a few things. Originally, I started in working close to life size. And so I kind of got away from that because it's difficult for people to find places in their home to put a piece of that size. And so I would like to, in one of my upcoming shows, work on a few pieces that are a little closer to life size again. Just because, for me, it's really fun to see it where it's almost the size of a child, you know.
Would that be in polymer?
I would do it in polymer. I would just have to do it in pieces.
Buckets of polymer.
Yeah, in stages. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, and then I see the little one in the back. It's holding a little dolly.
Yes, she has her own doll. This one is Emily in Grandma's Attic, and it was from a show called Ghost Stories in the Attic. And so it was sort of that whole thing of like when you find the treasure trunk in Grandma's attic and it has all the cool old things like the old hobby horse and old toys and the favorite blanket and just kind of holding away up there with a favorite book in Grandma's attic. But like this one, I made a mosaic skirt so I didn't have to sew. But this was also made from when we had the earthquake in Napa. A bunch of my pottery fell and broke, and it just broke my heart, and I sat bawling, and my daughter was next to me just patting my back and going, Mom, just let it go, just let it go. And I was like, I can't, I bought this in Italy, and so I bagged it up and I went, I will be able to use this for something. And I set it aside, and total hoarder. And I made this crown a couple years ago in a little ceramics class. It's a raku ceramic crown. And I went, oh my gosh, I can make a little princess and I can make a little mosaic skirt and it'll be perfect. And then it's like all about how in life we're broken people, but we're still beautiful. So I wanted to put together all those broken pieces. So, because they're still pretty. I like the pretty.
So This is Terri at Art of Toys. You can find these dolls on www.artoftoys.com. Or come to the gallery for the month of October on the corner of L and 18th in Sacramento. And then Sherry, you have a website with more dolls and info.
It's sherrydebeau.com or Sherry DeBeau on Instagram.
So thank you.